Don't make a sound. A tiny voice hissed from the shadows of my own luxury car. I froze, key in hand. A little girl was hiding inside, her eyes wide with terror. They're watching you. Right now. The voice, sharp and clear despite its whisper, sliced through the monotonous drumming of rain against the pavement of the parking garage. Jonathan Miller, CEO of Apex Innovations, stood frozen, his hand hovering over the door handle of his deep gray Lexus LS 500. The order had come from within the car itself. His eyes struggled to adjust to the dim glow of the interior ambient lighting. And then he saw her. A small girl, no older than 7, huddled in the back seat like a frightened sparrow. Her eyes, wide and luminous in the faint light, were fixed on the glass monolith of the Apex Tower behind him. "They're listening," she whispered again, a small, trembling finger pointing discreetly towards the 10th floor corner office, its lights still blazing against the rainy Seattle night. "Your partner, and the blonde woman with him. They said you'd be down any minute." Jonathan, at 52, had built a $200 million tech empire from nothing. He'd navigated hostile takeovers, market crashes, and ruthless competitors. But nothing had prepared him for this. For 15 years, Marcus Williams had been more than a partner. He'd been a brother. For a decade, Diana Foster had been his executive assistant, the unflappable organizer of his entire professional life. He trusted them implicitly. "How did you get into my car?" he asked, his voice a low, steady murmur. He slid into the driver's seat, his movements slow and deliberate, careful not to startle the child further. The cleaning crew left a door ajar when they went on their break. I saw them upstairs through the big window. They were talking about you. Her small eyes held an intelligence that seemed out of place with her frayed, oversized University of Washington hoodie. They said that by this time tomorrow, you won't own any of this anymore. A chill colder than the damp night air crept down Jonathan's spine. Tomorrow was the climactic meeting with the Japanese investors from Taniguchi Corp., the final step in a $400 million merger that Marcus and Diana had orchestrated down to the last detail. "What else did you hear?" he asked, pulling out his phone and pretending to scroll through emails, using the screen's reflection to watch the illuminated windows above. That you're too trusting to notice." The girl hesitated. "The blonde woman," she laughed. "She said you're like a well-trained little dog. You'll sign wherever she points without even reading the words." She shrank back into the plush leather seat. "She said the day after tomorrow, you'll be on the street looking for a new job. They said other mean things, but my grandma always told me kids shouldn't repeat ugly words." A strange mix of white-hot fury and a surprising surge of gratitude washed over Jonathan. This child, a complete stranger, had put herself at risk to warn him. "What's your name?" "Jasmine. And you're Jonathan Miller. I heard them say your name 100 times. She paused, her small frame tense. "Are you going to call the cops on me now?" For the first time in what felt like months, a genuine smile touched Jonathan's lips. "No, Jasmine, I'm not. In fact, I think you may have just saved everything I've ever built." Through the rearview mirror, he saw the office lights click off, one by one. They were coming down. Marcus and Diana, descending from their perch, confident in the masterfully set trap that would spring tomorrow. They had no idea that their prey had just found the most unlikely of saviors. And Jasmine, unknowingly, had given him the one thing more precious than any merger deal, a chance to fight back. As he started the Lexus and pulled silently out of the garage, a plan was already beginning to form. But a single question echoed in his mind. Why would a 7-year-old girl risk everything for a man she didn't know? The answer, he would soon discover, would redefine not just his plan for revenge, but his entire understanding of justice. 20 minutes later, the Lexus was parked outside the Nighthawk Diner, a classic 24-hour joint whose warm, neon glow was a beacon in the rainy Seattle night. Inside, they sat in a worn vinyl booth, the air thick with the smell of coffee and frying bacon. Jasmine, her oversized hoodie now draped over the back of the seat, was devouring a cheeseburger with a focus that broke Jonathan's heart. He nursed a cup of black coffee, the warmth doing little to quell the icy turmoil in his gut. His phone buzzed on the table. A message from Marcus. Ready for the big day, my friend? The Taniguchi team is going to be blown away. You're going to retire a very, very rich man. Jonathan slid the phone across the table. Jasmine glanced at it, her mouth full of fries, and let out a small, muffled laugh. He's good at pretending, isn't he? Lying right to your face while patting you on the back. He's always been charming, convincing. Jonathan murmured, typing back a cheerful, innocuous reply, the simple act feeling like a betrayal of his own boiling rage. Diana was the same. She knew his schedule better than he did, knew his coffee order, knew the names of his long-gone parents. She had access to everything. Are you just going to let them trick you tomorrow? Jasmine asked, her tone matter-of-fact. Jonathan looked at the small, serious face across from him and felt the last vestiges of shock give way to a cold, hard resolve. No, Jasmine. But the most important thing right now is that they can't know that I know. As if on cue, another message arrived. This time from Diana. Jonathan, I've triple-checked the final contracts. Everything is perfect for the signing. You've always trusted me, and I'll make sure tomorrow goes off without a hitch. You deserve this success more than anyone. The cloying sweetness of the message, the calculated performance of loyalty, was nauseating. For 10 years, she had been his gatekeeper, his confidant. Do they know a lot about you? Jasmine asked, meticulously dipping a fry into a pool of ketchup. They know everything, Jonathan admitted, the full weight of the vulnerability hitting him. Bank logins, company account details, the location of every important file. The betrayal wasn't a single act. It was a decade-long infiltration. They had years to lay the groundwork for this. But you've had years of stuff on them too, right? Jonathan paused, his coffee cup halfway to his lips. The simple, profound logic of her question struck him like a bolt of lightning. Of course. 15 years of partnership. 10 years of near-constant proximity. He knew things. Marcus's clandestine meetings with competitors he thought were secret. The convoluted bonus structure Diana had quietly built for herself. Emails he'd been accidentally copied on. Snatches of conversations overheard when they thought he was distracted on a call. You have a very sharp mind, Jasmine. My grandma used to say that when you don't have anything, you learn to pay attention to everything, she said, wiping her hands on a napkin. They think you're just a nice man. They think you're not paying attention. But you are, aren't you? He looked at this small child, who had appeared like a ghost in his car, and felt a flicker of something he hadn't felt in years. Hope, forged in the fires of anger and determination. Yes, Jasmine, I am. He had to ask, why did you do it? Why warn me? Jasmine looked out the rain-streaked window for a long moment. Because I know what it's like, she said softly. When people look right through you, like you're not there. They were talking about you like you were just a thing, a tool, to get what they wanted. Her gaze met his, and her eyes held a wisdom far beyond her years. My grandma always said, when you see someone being stepped on, and you have a chance to help, you help. Because you never know when you'll be the one on the ground. The lesson in raw, unvarnished humanity, delivered by a 7-year-old in a lonely diner, solidified his resolve. This was no longer just about saving his company. It was about honoring the courage of the small girl sitting across from him. It was about proving that trust is not a weakness, and kindness is not an invitation to be devoured. The next morning, Jonathan woke on his living room sofa with a clarity he hadn't experienced in months. Jasmine was asleep in the guest room, a small lump under a mountain of blankets. His first call was not to his lawyer, but to a number he hadn't dialed in over a year. Leo Donovan answered on the second ring, his voice a gravelly baritone. Miller, to what do I owe the pleasure? I thought your partner made it clear my services were no longer required. The irony was bitter. Leo, a brilliant, tenacious former Seattle PD economic crimes detective, had been let go a year ago. Marcus and Diana had cited budget cuts. Now, Jonathan understood the real reason. Leo was too good at his job. He asked too many questions. Leo, that decision wasn't mine, and I need your help. I think I know why they really fired you. 2 hours later, Leo Donovan was sitting in Jonathan's kitchen, sipping from a battered stainless steel thermos. He looked at Jasmine, who was meticulously building a tower of sugar cubes on the table, with a look of grudging admiration. So this little operative uncovered a $200 million conspiracy. My grandma said to always listen when grown-ups think you're not there, Jasmine said without looking up. A wise woman, Leo grunted. He opened his laptop. Jonathan, I never liked the way I was let go. It felt tidy. Too tidy. So I kept digging on my own time. The screen lit up, not with spreadsheets, but with a complex spiderweb-like diagram. At the center was the Apex Innovations logo. From it, dozens of lines snaked out to a constellation of other company names. Marcus and Diana aren't just planning a takeover, Leo said, his voice grim. They're seasoned thieves. For the last 2 years, they've been siphoning funds through a network of 17 shell corporations. He zoomed in on the diagram. The lines terminated at nodes labeled with locations. Panama, the Cayman Islands, Liechtenstein. The evidence was staggering. Forged invoices, phantom clients, inflated expense reports. A slow, methodical bleed that amounted to over $5 million. The merger with Taniguchi isn't about growth, Leo explained, his finger tracing a path from a shell company to the Taniguchi logo. It's a laundry machine. They need your signature on the merger documents to retroactively legitimize years of fraudulent transfers. Once you sign, the dirty money gets washed clean with a $400 million influx. Then they oust you, and the paper trail vanishes forever. They're not just stealing your company, Jonathan. They're using you to commit federal crimes. A cold, precise rage settled in Jonathan's chest. It wasn't just a betrayal of friendship. It was a calculated, criminal enterprise built on his trust. Now it gets good. Jasmine chirped, abandoning her sugar cubes. They think you're sleepy old bear, but you have a detective and a spy on your side. Leo almost smiled. She's right. They've underestimated you completely. His phone buzzed. He glanced at it. Speaking of which, I just got a hit on an alert I set up months ago. One of the shell companies just made a significant transfer. A company called Phoenix Capital. Jasmine's head shot up. Phoenix Capital. I heard them say that name. The blonde woman was on the phone, and she said, Phoenix is ready for the final transfer as soon as Miller signs. Leo's eyes locked with Jonathan's. That was it. The final, critical piece of the puzzle, provided by their star witness. They're moving the last of the stolen money, getting ready for the big wash, Leo said, his fingers flying across the keyboard. This gives us everything we need. Jonathan's phone rang. It was Marcus. Partner, hope you got a good night's sleep. Big day. Just remember, don't you worry your head about all that legal jargon in the contracts. That's what you have us for. Just show up, smile, and sign where Diana shows you. We'll handle the rest. The condescension was suffocating. They saw him as a prop in their own play. After he hung up, Leo closed his laptop. You have 2 choices. We can call the feds right now, and this becomes a long, messy court battle. Or, he leaned forward, his eyes glinting. Or we let them walk right into their own trap. You go to that meeting, not as the lamb they're leading to the slaughter, but as the hunter they never saw coming. At 2 p.m. sharp, Jonathan walked into the 10th floor conference room. The floor-to-ceiling windows offered a panoramic view of a cloud-choked Seattle skyline. The long, polished mahogany table reflected the grim faces of the Japanese investors from Taniguchi Corporation. At the head of the table, Marcus and Diana stood like proud parents, beaming, stacks of documents arranged before them with surgical precision. Jonathan, there he is, Marcus boomed, enveloping him in a back-slapping hug that felt like a viper's embrace. Glad you could make it. Everyone's ready to make history. Diana glided over, holding a leather-bound folder and a gold pen. Boss, she cooed, her voice dripping with feigned reverence. You just need to sign on the pages I've marked with the yellow tabs. Trust me, just like you always have. Jonathan took the pen, his hand steady. He looked from Marcus's predatory smile to Diana's mask of devotion. He looked at the expectant faces of the investors. Then he placed the pen down on the table with a soft, definitive click. Actually, he said, his voice calm and clear, cutting through the room's tense silence. Before we sign anything, I have a short presentation I'd like to share. Before Marcus could object, the conference room door opened. Leo Donovan walked in, followed by two stern-faced individuals in dark suits who flashed FBI badges. "What the hell is this?" Marcus sputtered, his smile vanishing. "This," Jonathan said, plugging his laptop into the room's projector, "is a presentation on corporate finance. Specifically on your finances." The first slide that appeared on a massive screen was the intricate spiderweb diagram of shell companies. The room filled with sharp intakes of breath. "Jonathan, what is this nonsense? Some kind of last-minute power play." Diana's voice was sharp, but a tremor of panic ran beneath it. "It's not a power play, Diana. It's an audit." Jonathan clicked to the next slide, which showed bank statements from Phoenix Capital, detailing transfers that perfectly matched the dates of Apex's major project payments. "You funneled $5.3 million out of my company over 24 months. You created 17 fake vendors to do it." Marcus's face was a mask of crimson fury. "This is illegal. You hacked my private information." "Did I?" Jonathan's voice was soft, almost conversational. "Or did you just get careless? You see, you thought I was a sentimental old fool. But you forgot that I built this company by paying attention to the details." Diana suddenly burst into tears. "It was him," she shrieked, pointing a trembling finger at Marcus. "He made me do it. He threatened me. I was just following orders." "You lying witch," Marcus roared, turning on her. "This was your idea from start." As they began to tear each other apart, the door opened again. This time, a social worker entered, holding the hand of a small, composed girl in a simple, clean dress. "Jasmine." Diana's head snapped towards her. "A child? You're basing these insane accusations on the word of some street urchin." Jasmine walked calmly to the head of the table, her eyes fixed on Diana. "My name is Jasmine," she said, her voice steady and clear. "And I didn't just hear you. I recorded you." She held up a small digital audio recorder and pressed play. Diana's voice, crisp and clear, filled the silent room. "Jonathan is a sentimental idiot. The day after tomorrow, he'll have to look for another job, and we'll get everything. That clown will never know what hit him." Then came Marcus's voice, smug and self-satisfied. 15 years pretending to be friends with that imbecile. It'll be worth every second when I see his face when he finds out he's lost everything." A collective gasp went through the room. Diana collapsed in her chair, a strangled sob escaping her lips. Marcus, his face purple with rage, lunged across the table toward Jonathan. "You bastard! You set me up!" He was intercepted by the two agents, who efficiently spun him around and clicked handcuffs onto his wrists. "Marcus Williams, Diana Foster," one agent said, his voice flat. "You are under arrest for embezzlement, wire fraud, and conspiracy." As they were led away, Marcus screamed over his shoulder, "I'll destroy you for this, Miller. I'll see you in hell." Jonathan calmly straightened his tie. He walked over to Marcus and leaned in close, his voice a low whisper only he could hear. "You spent 15 years thinking I was a fool, but it only took you one night to reveal your true self to a 7-year-old girl. You weren't beaten by me, Marcus. You were beaten by your own arrogance." 6 months later, Jonathan stood in his new office. It was on the 20th floor, 10 stories higher than his old one, with a view that stretched across Puget Sound to the distant Olympic Mountains. The view was clear and bright, much like the future of his company. Freed from the parasitic drain of Marcus and Diana's scheme, Apex Innovations was thriving, with a 40% growth in revenue. Leo Donovan knocked and entered, a satisfied smile on his face. The latest from the courthouse. Marcus was sentenced to 12 years in federal prison. Diana got 8. They lost everything. Houses, cars, savings. All assets were seized to pay restitution to the company. Jonathan nodded, feeling not triumph, but a quiet sense of justice restored. And the others? We found 7 other small business owners they defrauded with similar schemes over the years. Thanks to our evidence, they're all getting their money back. You didn't just save your own company, Jonathan. The door burst open and Jasmine ran in, home from the private school she now attended. Her uniform was immaculate, her backpack stuffed with books. She was radiant with the easy confidence of a child who knows she is safe and loved. "Dad, I got an A on my history presentation, she announced, waving a paper proudly. The word dad still sent a wave of warmth through him. The adoption had been finalized 2 months ago. That's my girl, he said, beaming. I knew you could do it. Leo watched them, shaking his head. It's still surreal. A 7-year-old girl saves a multi-million-dollar corporation. Actually, Jonathan said, his expression turning serious. He gestured for them to sit. There's something else. Something I found out last week. He opened a drawer and pulled out a worn, leather-bound photo album, one of his late father's. He'd been going through his parents' old things, a task he'd put off for years. He opened it to a faded, black-and-white photograph from the 1960s. It showed his father as a young man, arm in arm with a smiling young woman. Jasmine, do you remember your grandmother's full name? Of course, she said. Josephine Miller. Leo's eyebrows shot up. Miller, as in, Jonathan pointed to the young woman in the photo. This is Josephine Miller, my father's cousin. My cousin. The family lost touch with her after she moved away 30 years ago. He then pulled a small, velvet box from the drawer. Inside was a delicate silver locket, tarnished with age. I found this with the photo. I almost threw it away. Jasmine gasped. She reached into her school bag and pulled out a small, worn cloth pouch. From it, she carefully extracted an identical silver locket, though hers was more battered, its chain broken. This was Grandma's. It was the only thing of hers I had left. The silence in the room was thick with unspoken emotion. Jonathan looked from the locket in his hand to the one in hers, and finally to the bright, intelligent eyes of the girl who was not just his daughter, but his family, his blood. So, when she warned you, Leo began, his voice uncharacteristically soft. It was family, looking out for family. Jonathan finished, his voice thick. She couldn't have known, not consciously, but something inside her did. Something recognized a connection. Jasmine launched herself into his arms, burying her face in his chest. I knew it, she whispered. Grandma always said family finds a way back to each other. In that moment, Jonathan understood. Marcus and Diana's betrayal hadn't just been a crisis to be overcome. It had been a catalyst. It had been the dark, winding path that led him back to the family he never knew he had lost. 5 years later, Miller Industries was a titan in the tech world. But Jonathan Miller's proudest achievement was not his company's stock price. It was the Jasmine Miller Foundation. At the foundation's annual fundraising gala, a large screen displayed the smiling faces of the more than 200 at-risk children the foundation was currently supporting with housing, education, and mentorship. The guest of honor and the foundation's youth ambassador, a poised and articulate 12-year-old Jasmine Miller, stood at the podium. 5 years ago, I was one of those kids, she said, her voice clear and strong, resonating through the grand ballroom. I was invisible, but one person saw me. And because he did, hundreds of other children are now being seen too. Later that evening, she and Jonathan stood on the balcony, looking out at the glittering city lights. Jonathan had received 2 letters that week, both postmarked from federal prisons. One was from Marcus, a pathetic, rambling apology. The other was from Diana, blaming Marcus for everything. He had torn them both up without a second thought. Do you know what the best day of my life was? Jasmine asked, her eyes reflecting the city lights. Let me guess, Jonathan smiled. The day you got adopted? Close, she said, her own smile bright. It was the day I hid in your car. Because on that day, I wasn't just saving your company. I was saving us. I was finding my way home. Jonathan put his arm around his daughter, his heart full. Marcus and Diana had tried to take everything from him. They had weaponized his trust and mocked his kindness. But in their arrogance, they had given him the greatest gift of his life. They had inadvertently orchestrated the reunion of a family, and in doing so, had given him a purpose far greater than any business deal. He had learned the ultimate lesson. True revenge isn't about destroying your enemies. It's about building a future so bright and meaningful that their betrayal becomes nothing more than a forgotten footnote in the story of your success. They had tried to steal his legacy, but instead, they gave him a new one. A story that began with a treacherous plot ended with the reunion of a family and the salvation of hundreds of children. It's a powerful reminder that even in our darkest moments, The most unexpected angels can appear, guiding us toward a light we never knew existed. Have you ever had an unexpected guardian angel appear in your life? Share your story in the comments below. And please remember, in this community, we always comment with respect. If this story touched your heart, subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss a story that reminds us of the power of hope.